This episode is brought to you by Curriculum Rehab by us, the team here at Brave New Teaching. It is the first and only teacher PD of its kind, a course to help teachers like you by guiding you through creating your own personal framework for curriculum. You make it work for you, your students, and your unique situation because nobody else knows what the kiddos in your classroom need the way that you do. Curriculum Rehab takes all of the resources available to you, all of the lessons, the assessments, the activities, all of the texts, everything that could possibly be there for you, and it helps you organize what you actually need in order to attain your teaching objectives. These are the strategies that Amanda and myself have used in our own classrooms, have developed over very long years of teaching and figuring things out, combined together to create this framework and these strategies that we can guide you through. This course will give you the tools you need for a complete curriculum overhaul or to start from scratch. Wherever you are on that continuum, it does it all for you and with you on your timeline. So start today, do a little bit more in a couple of months, and then pick it up next summer. It's Teacher PD the way it should be on your own time. Head to curriculumrehab.com/course for more information, or just head to the show notes for this episode. We cannot wait to see you there. It's finally time to take control of what goes on in your own classroom and create the curriculum of your dreams. All right, let's get back into the show.
Well, hello, and welcome back to Brave New Teaching. How's it going, everyone? I hope that your school year is off to a great start. For those of you in the Northern Hemisphere who are just kind of getting into the deep end of your Unit 1 and starting your school year, for those of you who are in the Southern Hemisphere, I hope that you are getting ready to wrap up a super school year as well. Wherever you are, we are just so excited for all the new things that are coming at you here on the Brave New Teaching podcast. And a lot of the things that are going to stay the same. You know, we're going to keep bringing you these episodes every single Thursday. And we're really putting a lot of work into some new series, some new interviews, great new authors, some old authors returning to the podcast too. And we're just really pumped for this 24-25 school year and seeing what all kinds of cool things we can do together and we can bring you to make your teaching experience that much more awesome every single year. So if you're new around here, welcome once again. I am Amanda, and this week's episode is a solo episode, and I am taking you all through some of the reflections I had upon culminating my family's trip to Disney this summer. And I have to say, I kind of got into this Disney vacation from a distance, right? Like cautiously optimistic. I would say that we're generally like Disney and a family that enjoys the Disney movies every now and again that come through. My daughter is certainly in a princess era, but really more so like the story era of, you know, that her using her imagination, and she really likes getting to know new characters of all sorts. So they were going to have a really good time seeing characters and experiencing stories that they know from TV in real life. And so that was really exciting for us because it wasn't about the rides. You know, no one knew what to expect. No one had any anticipations or goals or things that had to be accomplished. Everyone was kind of going into it really just for the experience. And so with that being the case, I think we were able to just kind of approach the trip with a lot less stress and just to have fun, sit back and enjoy the experience. And in doing so, I could not help. I did not actually record myself during this Disney trip because I very much was having, you know, in my mind, I was like, I just want to be present. I want to be in the moment. This is something that I'm working on. So as tempted as I was to pull out my mic and record while we were there, I just kind of like took notes when I got back to the room each night about this particular episode because it was brewing, right? Every day we kind of had another experience at Disney. I was thinking about this episode and I was thinking about teaching theme. It is one of the most commonly asked questions on my Instagram, the BNT Instagram, one of the most commonly searched for types of lessons on Google. And teachers everywhere are always looking for either new ways to teach theme or easier ways to teach theme because it is a standard on pretty much every single set of state standards. It's absolutely in Common Core. But what I think we've all realized is that a sentence that says students must learn theme is not really helpful in terms of instruction, is not really clear in terms of assessment. Like what are they supposed to be able to do with theme? And I think just kind of leaves teachers with way more questions than answers. And so it's been something on my mind, since I was in the classroom and while I've been coaching and doing PD, this is something that is asked over and over again. So I thought, and I've been thinking for a while to just do an episode dedicated to teaching theme. But as I was going through this Disney experience, I was like, oh my gosh, like click, click, click. Disney is, of all of their flaws and issues, what they have absolutely mastered is the art of theming, theming their parks, theming their experience, theming their resorts. The theme work that they do is one of the things that makes them such an incredibly successful business. And so to me, I thought, okay, we need to bridge the gap here. Like, what is it about what Disney's doing right and what we are struggling to do in the classroom? And how can these two things come together and help us reach more students and kind of fill in all those questions that we have about teaching theme and assessing theme and being realistic about themes versus topics and theme statements, right? Claims, all this kind of stuff. I really want to break down for you. So in this episode, we are going to go through 3 lessons that I learned and kind of relearned about teaching theme through the Disney lens. And so you need not be a fan of Disney to learn something in this episode, but I am going to use it kind of as my vehicle, my examples to help share these kind of 3 realizations and revelations that I hope will help you in your lesson planning and your goal setting really for the whole school year. So with that said, I would probably take notes. Maybe you want to email this episode to a friend and you guys can buddy listen to this episode. And then once you've both listened, maybe make some plans for the school year. I know that theme is something that comes up usually early and hopefully often because we don't want to just like drop it and then leave it. So I wanted to get this out to you all early in the school year and see if it will help you think through some things for down the road. Alrighty, everyone, let's cue the music. You're listening to Brave New Teaching, and we are so much more than a podcast.
We give teachers the inspiration, support, and tools to challenge the status quo.
I'm Amanda, and I'm a former English teacher from Illinois.
And I'm Marie, and I'm a teacher from Southern California.
Join us at bravenewteaching.com to find out more about our courses, festivals, and get every episode's show notes.
We're so glad you're here. Enjoy the show.
All right, so before we hop in, Marie and I just wanted to send a quick shout out to some new friends who just joined us in Happy Hour. We are so happy to have you on the Happy Hour side of the podcast. Thank you for joining us, Lori and Andrew. I just saw your names pop up the other day, and we are just so happy that you are going to take the next step in your curriculum writing journey and your lesson planning work. We are so thrilled to work with you over in Happy Hour. And if you have not yet taken that leap and stepped over from listening to us here and listening to us every Friday as well and getting new resources, we would love to have you join us in Happy Hour. The easiest way to join is just to go to bravenewteaching.com/happy hour, and you can pop in and join us for as many months as you'd like and get new resources, lots of support, lots of cool and fresh thoughts and raw experiences. We are doing some new unit makeovers this school year, some really tight skill work in Happy Hour as well. So we're going to be doing a lot of that. We have some really awesome guests lined up to take over the mic as well. So if you haven't already, please join us at Happy Hour. That is bravenewteaching.com/happy hour. And again, Lori and Andrew, we are so happy you're here. Okay, it's time for some Disney chat. First and foremost, I need to make sure you all know that we actually had an incredible time. We had a very very good time. Maybe we hit the sweet spot. My kids are now 5 and 6. We just had a delightful time. Biggest surprise is both of my kids said that their favorite park was Epcot. I was very convinced it was going to be Magic Kingdom, but it was actually Epcot. They loved it. And we loved all of it. We just really, I told my friends when I got back, my book club friends, I said, the thing that was so awesome was just, first of all, the Disney experience really is something that you don't get in a lot of other tourist spaces. So like if you travel a lot like we do, that whatever you're going to do is going to cost money. So when you save up money to go on a vacation or go on a trip, it really makes a difference when you spend that money on how the experience ends up being and the people who take care of you and whether or not they do a good job. And we felt very well taken care of the whole time we were there. The cast members were so great. I have to say my best experience was showing up to our hotel. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I was begging my husband to stay at a Disney resort. I never have done that in my whole life. I've always stayed off property, but those are, my childhood memories of Disney are staying with my grandma. My grandma lived in Florida, so she had a season pass that, back in the 80s and 90s, you just passed it. It was probably like a punch card. It was probably construction paper. We just passed it around from family member to family member. There was no thumbprinting and no security. So she just shared that one season pass with all 9 of her children. So we would go and we were so grateful for that experience. But it was like a solid like hour and a half. We had to, get up at 4 a.m. and drive there and, spend the whole day. Anyway, I was really excited to stay at a resort because I had never done it before. And I really wanted to see if it was worth it, especially with young kids who were going to need to take a break during the day. And it turns out it was great. It was so, so great. So again, I went in cautiously optimistic and we had a lovely, lovely time. But of course, we are here to talk about theme and how Disney kind of helped me rethink the way I would coach my teachers to address theme in their classroom. So I got 3 lessons. Let's start with lesson number 1. Lesson number 1, theme is an experience. I'm going to let that settle in to your bones for a moment. Theme is an experience. And I'm going to say this a lot in this episode because I think one of the traps we fall into is theme is a standard. I think when we look at theme as a standard over and over and over again, it starts to feel separate from the story, right? It's an outside looking in skill. And it's really not, and not in the real world, right? Maybe in the sense of literary analysis and literary criticism, it might feel that way. But theme is an experience inside the story. And that experience requires a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so I say that to have us think about when and where we decide to teach theme. I know that our impulse and, where it usually lands on our scope and sequence is early in the school year. And I would kind of urge us to push back against that for just a second. Theme might be one of the most complex parts of understanding literature and what it's trying to tell us about some of these really big human emotions and human experiences. Not only do our students have very little human experience, not only are they just young, so many of our kids are sheltered or are unable to experience a lot of the world around them, and their immediate surroundings are kind of it for a lot of our kids. So teaching theme with those things being true already, and the fact that we're facing a crisis in literacy in our nation, they don't even have a lot of literary experience to draw from. So when we push theme hard from the beginning and we kind of have this mastery level expectation for them, I can kind of see where we're falling short and getting frustrated. And so if we think about theme as an experience that requires a beginning, middle, and an end, we might consider a couple of things. So this lesson 1 is a logistics consideration. first and foremost, I think a lot of us have kind of gone this direction, but we might consider when we teach theme, keeping the pieces really short and keeping the expectations of the theme statement or whatever we're going to learn about theme really simple. If we try to overcomplicate theme right out the gate, I think that is one of the things that sometimes gets in the way of students really investing in some of our other novels, right? There's kind of this big, lofty academic expectation that in order to be doing well in English, you must understand the themes of all the things that we're reading. And really, I think we need to get a lot of that, like those are cobwebs, right? That get stuck in kids' heads and get in the way of them really reading and enjoying reading. So if we really want to look at theme early, I would do it with things that are short. Poems, short stories, short films. Really, really short, and helping students being able to do kind of all the pieces of what it takes to build a theme statement, which means they have to be able to summarize the story. In order to understand the theme, we have to know the beginning, the middle, and the end, especially the end. The end oftentimes is kind of that, like, is that twist, is the turn that gives us the end of that theme statement, right? We know what the story is about for the first 70%, but the way it's handled during and after the conflict, that's usually where we get the criticism or the nuance or whatever that kind of individualized piece is to that story. It comes toward the end. And so if we're trying to teach theme with long pieces and kids are not getting to the end or our units are taking too long to get there, that feeling of teaching that skill is going to feel insurmountable. And it's going to feel like you're constantly talking about it all the time. So if you're teaching a short piece or teaching, right, something of that nature, I think we can do that more effectively with the size of the piece. I also think if we do want to teach theme with longer pieces, then we don't need to introduce theme until the end. We don't need to look at themes all across the novel. We can just finish the book, right? Like, let's finish some books together and then say, all right, let's look back at the story. Let's catalog the experiences of the characters and everything from the beginning to the middle to the end. Let's look at our evidence trackers. Let's look at, right, all these things that we've done. And from what we've done, let's start determining some themes, some thematic statements. That is also possible. We talked about this in lots of episodes. A lot of times we feel beholden to front-loading everything, or every skill needs to be taught every single week. And that might just not be the case. Maybe we teach theme at the end of every single novel, and then the sophistication of that conversation gets higher and higher with each unit. So we can also think about it that way. Whatever it is that we're going to do with teaching theme, I think that we just need to be very conscious about choosing when and where we teach it. And we really have this purposeful way of approaching it with the right text and the right experience. Okay, that's my first lesson. I did feel that, of course, I didn't feel that exactly in Magic Kingdom, but the other two, I have a more detailed experience. Okay, so lesson number 2 then, when teaching theme, is that it's the details of the experience that actually color that theme, right? If we're going to say, right, that themes are universal human experiences, it's the details that are going to shade that experience slightly differently from other stories that have similar themes. Like if we're going to look at Hansel and Gretel versus Rapunzel, there are details in the writing that we want kids to look at. There's author's craft at hand. Both of them have this kind of removed forest setting. They both kind of have these mystical, witchy creatures who are controlling the way things turn out. We have parents involved in both stories, but the way that the stories comment on family and independence and coming of age are different because of the details, because of the characterization, because of all these authors' craft tools that we're teaching our students. And so I think that if we are going to kind of learn from lesson number 1, if we're going to try to teach theme with a short piece, or we're going to try to teach theme at the end, then let's also make sure that we're teaching theme and. I want us to try to remember that teaching theme in isolation, anything, right? At this point, we know anything in isolation, we're going to struggle with that. But if we're going to teach theme, I want us to be also planning out in advance what are the author's craft tools that you're going to want students to talk about when they write their theme statements. If they're going to actually figure out, right, the theme from Beauty and the Beast, do you want them to get to the theme about love? Do you want them to get to a theme about otherness and the way that people are exiled from society? And right, which theme are we really heading toward? Let's kind of head toward a direction together if we're trying to model it. And then let's emphasize those author's craft tools that are being used to get there. So here's my Disney experience. So when we were at Magic Kingdom, my husband and I decided that one thing we wanted to do was the Bippity Boppity Boo experience. It's a princess dress up fiasco. Okay. It's like the whole shebang. And so we had talked to my family. My parents gifted this experience to my daughter, and then we gifted this experience to our niece. And so the whole idea is that you get to go to Cinderella's castle, you are assisted, and you get to turn into a princess for the day. You get to choose your princess, the whole costume. Like there's a bunch of different levels of what you can do. But the idea is to like go to the castle and get to become a princess for the day. And so for me, this was the experience, right? Bippity Boppity Boo was the experience. It's not the theme yet. We're not there. But in order for me as a customer to fully get immersed in this experience, Disney took us through several really important steps. First was the setting. In order for their customers to have the Bippity Boppity Boo experience, they put us in the castle. We were in the damn castle, which is like every little kid's dream, right? So the setting was a huge part of, right, sending this message that everyone can be whatever they want. You can dream up. You can be whoever you want to be, blah, 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 right? This is kind of like the generic form of the theme. So they put you in the castle. Setting was key. The characters. So a couple of things. There were actual humans there, right? Cast members. So we had an assistant who walked with us through picking out her outfit, picking out her hair combination, right? Was she going to do a bun or a color streak or whatever this might be? And then there's also stylists inside the castle where the girls got their nails done, their hair done, their very light, sparkly makeup done. And all of those things were done through a trained cast member who takes on this persona of being your hype woman, right? They were just hyping up the girls and talking about how special they were, like upcoming, you get the school year coming up, you're going to do great. And I'm so amazed. Your mom told me that you finished preschool this year and you went through a lot of struggles and blah, 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 right? So like they're totally just hyping up the kids. And then in the changing room, the fairy godmother herself shows up. She shows up inside the mirror and does this whole kind of like self-love mantra in the mirror. Did I record the whole thing? Yes. Did I cry through the whole thing? Absolutely. Can I figure out a way to maybe share it with you on the website? I will try to figure that out. But I was just bawling, right? Because it was the messaging coming from this character, right? Fairy godmother inside Cinderella's castle. So now we're kind of connecting setting and character. And then of course there's a tone. The tone comes from the voice of the characters. The tone comes from the details that are highlighted in the way that the room is put together, where the kids are getting ready, the magic wand that puts sparkles all over their head at the end, right? All of these little tone pieces added up to a beautiful experience, which left us with this message, right? Of you are beautiful inside and out, and you can do anything you want in this world. It was amazing. And it was brilliant. And like, that's how theme works. It works in this way. So if we think about this same concept with a unit, what is the theme you're getting after? You already know the story. You've read it 1,000 times. What is the theme that you really want your kids to head toward? What are then the skills that you think you want to isolate so that they understand. They're looking at setting, they're looking at character, and they're looking at tone. If they've been looking at setting and character and tone the whole story, and then you get to the end and you're like, okay, so now let's talk about theme. Your author used these 3 things in order to achieve this theme. Now we are actually working with something into that theme conversation rather than starting with theme and trying to fill in the gaps as we go. I hope that makes sense. And if you do ever get a chance to do this experience at Disney, it is extraordinarily overpriced, but it was a beautiful experience, right? And for our set of family values is like experiences for us are something that we prioritize over a lot of other things like in our home, right? Even that's just kind of like the way we travel, right? We'll spend money on a trip, but we don't fix our water heater. It's fine. I can just see Marie rolling her eyes at me right now. She's a much more responsible adult than I am, for certain. Okay, so then our last lesson for today that I'm taking away in terms of theme is this question, this like lingering question of how important is it really for students to independently articulate a theme? I'll ask it for you one more time. How important is it really for students to independently articulate a theme? Think about it. Think about it. How much of that original writing from start to finish is a concrete expectation for the real world? I'm going to pause and really let you think about this. All right. So as I've reflected on it, I don't know, maybe this is predictable for me, but as I've come to it myself, I feel like it's not that important. Like, I really don't think it's that important for them to be able to do it independently. I'd love to have this chat with anyone else sometime. But if you look at Common Core, and I'm just going to use Common Core because I can't look at everybody's state standards. But Common Core says, determine a theme or central idea and analyze it in detail, its development over the course of the text, including how it emerges and is shaped and refined by specific details, right? This is exactly what we've been talking about today. We also have on here to analyze complex characters and how they advance the plot or develop the theme. So it's not even directly articulated in Common Core state standards. The kids need to be able to write a theme independently. So as we kind of tackle these existential ideas of being educators in the 21st century, at the onset of artificial intelligence especially, this might be a place where we really have to wrestle with this idea. You have to talk about it with your team and figure out, I only have 180 days. I only have so many class periods. How many of those am I going to dedicate to teaching kids how to write a theme statement and then to revise them and then to perfect them? So I'm not saying we don't need to teach it, but I am saying that for those of you who have ever felt like me, which is, if I'm going to teach it, I want to teach it so that they can get it right. That's kind of gotten a little bit out of control. I've definitely spent too much time on that one single skill. So here are a couple of things to think about. What is the skill that we actually need students to be able to do in a literary and in a non-literary sense? So, for example, I think that, first of all, I am going to just toot my own horn for a second and say, if your school needs help with this, this is what I am doing now professionally. If you have not yet had a vertically articulating conversation with your department, one of the biggest things we can do to solve this issue is to vertically articulate. If we know that freshman and sophomore year teachers are focusing on theme statement construction, or they're focusing on determining the correct theme from a list of available themes, we need to know and not be reteaching the same things every year for 4 years. That gets kids to check out right away. So if we're not vertically articulating, like, you're going to feel like you're in that hamster wheel. So first of all, call me. Let's do some vertical articulation on lots of things, not just theme statements. But for you, if you're in the classroom and you're thinking about this, right, we have a couple of choices. You can, number one, Give kids theme statement sentence starters. You can give them fill in the blank theme statement things. You can also give them pre-written theme statements. Maybe they don't have to write them themselves. Maybe you can actually give kids a list of theme statements, and the lesson is reading them, determining which one is the most accurate, and learning how to defend the accuracy of a theme statement rather than solely being responsible for writing them in the first place. My fear is that we're going to spend so much time teaching kids how to write them that they're not going to be able to do the other part, which is read one, determine if it's accurate, analyze it, and then provide evidence to defend that response. I hope, right? You see what I'm saying? There are a lot of smaller pieces to this that can get missed if we focus too hard on the actual writing. So I'm not saying don't do it, but I am saying make sure that you have a stopping point, right? You have a way to be done with it and move on and revisit it another time or to let it go. So that's one thing we can do, right? So AI can craft theme statements left and right. It is so easy, right? I can plug into Google Genesis right now or Google Gemini. I can tell it I'm writing a theme statement about the novel of Mice and Men, and that my theme statement needs to have this, 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 and this. Can you please write me a draft? Boom, done. We have to come to the, again, this existential crisis. Are we okay with that? Can we let kids do that? Can we do that ourselves? And then make the conversation not about originally crafting it, but about determining whether or not it successfully does what it's supposed to do. Okay, so keep in mind how much time you allot is the first part of that. The second part would be understanding theme to me in the real world. So in the non-literary sense is, for me, and I'm thinking about Disney, right? If I work for Disney and I don't understand the theme, it's kind of like not being able to read the room, right? Like if you don't understand the theme of what you're doing, you're going to have mixed messages. You're going to you're going to ruin the experience, right? Like if the understanding of theme is off, the experience will then feel off for the consumer, right? For the participant. And so I do want kids to understand theme, but I want them to understand it in the sense of how it's working. Again, I think that that's something that I never really had time to do because I was spending so much time teaching kids how to write a theme statement and the difference between theme and topics. And it was just a time thing. It wasn't that I didn't know these other things, but I felt like I didn't have enough time. And so can we get to a place where we are actually creating lessons and experiences for students where they can say, yeah, this is the theme. So if this were to have happened in the story, that would have altered the theme or would have altered the experience of that. I also think it kind of translates in the real world. An actual skill kids would need to learn is this concept of being on brand, right? If an organization, a company, whether you're marketing or you're just working for the company, if you're not working within the vibe, to use another Gen Z word, right? If you're not working within the vibe of the brand, the vibe of the company, there's going to be something off, right? And if you're off message, if you're off on the vibes, there's going to be usually, right, either some kind of misstep amongst, right, the user experience. Maybe that might also even translate to a loss of cash flow if they're not in step. So I do need my kids to understand theme. I do need them to be able to point out, these are the details that help us arrive here. These are the things that need to happen for this theme to be effectively, right, translating for our audience. And I think one other thing kind of in that same vein, when it comes to the non-literary experience of theme, if we're going to think about companies and brands, successful theming and branding is a very lucrative part of business, right? If you are somehow stepping off brand or stepping out of the way that an organization runs, that's going to end up distracting the customer, right? Or it's going to end up not lining up with the values of what the company stands for, and then they could be losing business. So I think finding ways to kind of connect those together will help make teaching this seemingly very like literary skill that doesn't have a lot of real life connections actually, translate for kids into what it means to go out into the world and either get theme or not. If you are not aware of the way things work around you in your organization or in your company's workflow, that's going to be problematic. And that goes for kids who are in any line of work, college degree or not. They've got to be self-aware and company aware in order to be successful. So I could also say this to me is exactly like spot on for the resort experience we had at Disney, right? We stayed in the New Orleans themed resort, the Riverside Hotel or whatever. And it was completely on brand. It was a love letter to Louisiana. It was absolutely beautiful, from the lobby and all the details in the fans, in the paintings, in the light fixtures, everything about it. Not to mention, yes, they were Disney beignets, but they were in the shape of Mickey's head. So like Mickey beignets were delicious. I mean, were they actually like authentically New Orleans? I highly doubt it, but they were really good. And being a customer of the Disney brand, of the Tiana's story, being immersed in that accurately was a huge part of the positive experience that we had as consumers, as the audiences of that message. And so when we got to our room and we pulled down my daughter's bed and Louis is laying there, on his back with his trumpet, and the sconces above our bed I felt like we were like in the bayou, the little shower curtain with little baby frogs and, wishing stars, like all of those little things. Again, this goes back to lesson 2, the details that created that theme, that sense of being inside the story, were a highly positive customer experience. Will I ever stay anywhere other than a Disney resort? If we can swing it, no way. I will absolutely pay to be part of the experience again. I will go back. I mean, until my kids are too big and we don't fit in the rooms anymore. That was part of our experience. So financially speaking, right, for Disney, they're going to get my money because their team who developed everything did a great job and they created this experience for us that was wonderful. Same goes for the parks, right? Everything that you're part of in a ride, in the line, eating food, being in Epcot, in these different places, like it was amazing. And so I want to wrap today's episode up by just reminding us of these 3 lessons and using them to think through our lesson planning for the whole year. When we teach in curriculum rehab, one of the things that we encourage our teachers to do, we encourage it here as well. We just teach it more directly in curriculum rehab. But what we want you to do is to constantly be zooming out. Zoom out. If you're feeling too close to your lesson plans today, take a breath and look at your year-long calendar again. How often are you looking at your year-long calendar? And when you do that, remind yourself that not everything has to happen right now. Where do these ideas for teaching theme, where do they best fit? Where are they going to get the most bang for their buck? Where are they going to be the richest? Because the story that you're going to use, the stories that you're going to use are the best models for this conversation. So as you leave today, here are the 3 lessons that you're going to think about as you look at your zoomed out year-long calendar. Number 1, theme is an experience, and that experience requires a beginning, middle, and end. Lesson 2, the details of the experience enhance and color that theme. We should be teaching theme and as much as possible. And finally, lesson number 3 was, how important is it actually for kids to articulate a theme statement independently? How important is that? Really be honest with yourself, be honest with your team, send this to your department chair if you need that person to listen to this. Let's be real and figure that out and allot only the time needed for that skill. And let's move on to some of the other really more pressing critical thinking parts of that question. Okay, everyone, I know this was a little long. I had a lot to say about theme, and I hope that this really just gets you back in the mode of thinking about where and when things are going to be a best fit and not feeling the pressure to always teach it the same way you always have, unless it's already working. And if it's already working, we want to hear about it. Please comment on our Instagram, send us an email, share with us what you're doing. You can comment on the show notes on our website. There are lots of places to get involved in having a conversation about theme. But the best place is to join us over in Happy Hour, where we have much more detailed discussions about these things with actionable lesson plans and resources every single month. Thank you all for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Thanks again for listening to Brave New Teaching.
We'd love to keep the conversation going over on Instagram.
And while you're there, check out the links in our bio for the most up-to-date events going on in the Brave New Teaching community.
Thanks for being here and have a great week at school.